By the time Elvis Presley died, he had almost no money left. Think about that for a moment. The best-selling solo music artist in human history. Over 1 billion records sold. Sold out arenas every single night for 20 years. Movies, merchandise, Las Vegas residencies that printed money like a government mint. And when he died, he was nearly broke. Where did it all go? One man knows the answer to that question. And that man, the man who controlled every dollar Elvis ever made, every contract Elvis ever signed, every decision Elvis ever made for over 20 years, was hiding a secret so profound, so completely devastating, that if Elvis had ever found out the full truth, he might still be alive today. His name was Colonel Tom Parker. Except, and this is where the story gets very dark, very fast, Colonel Tom Parker didn't exist. The man behind that name was born Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk in Breda, Netherlands, 1909. He was not American. He had no military rank. He was not a colonel. He gave himself that title sometime in the 1940s and dared anyone to question it. Nobody did, because nobody knew enough about him to question anything. Sometime in the late 1920s, a young Dutch man entered the United States illegally. No visa, no immigration papers, no record of how he crossed the border. He simply appeared. And then, in the small carnival towns of the American South, he began reinventing himself. He worked the carnivals. He promoted small-time acts. He learned how to make people pay attention, how to manufacture excitement, how to turn nothing into something. He was brilliant at it, and he was hiding something, because here is the secret that Tom Parker carried for his entire life. In 1929, just before he disappeared from the Netherlands and appeared in America, a young woman named Anna van den Enden was found murdered in Breda. The primary suspect was a young man named Andreas van Kuijk. Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk. Tom Parker. The case was never solved. The suspect disappeared. And weeks later, a young Dutch man with no papers, no name, and no past showed up in the United States and started calling himself Tom Parker. Was Tom Parker a murderer who fled to America to escape justice? We cannot say that for certain. What we can say is this: Tom Parker never once, in over 50 years in America, applied for a passport. He never left the country. Not once. Not even when Elvis begged him to take the show to Europe. Not even when Japan offered them more money than they had ever seen. Not even when the entire world was waiting to see Elvis Presley perform live. Parker always had a reason, always an excuse, always a way to make it seem like it was Elvis's choice. But the real reason, the reason Parker could never leave America, was almost certainly because if he set foot outside this country, authorities in the Netherlands could finally reach him. A man running from a murder charge cannot apply for a passport. A man running from a murder charge cannot cross international borders. So instead, he kept Elvis here, in America, in Las Vegas, in a golden cage that Parker controlled completely. Now let's talk about the money. When Tom Parker became Elvis's manager in 1955, he negotiated his cut. Most managers take 15%. Some of the most aggressive managers in Hollywood take 25%. Tom Parker took 50%. 50 cents of every dollar Elvis Presley ever earned went directly into Tom Parker's pocket. And here is the part that will make your blood run cold. Elvis signed that contract when he was 20 years old. His father, Vernon Presley, co-signed it. They trusted Parker completely. They had no idea what they were agreeing to, because Parker didn't just take 50% of Elvis's income. He controlled the income itself. Every record deal, Parker negotiated it. Every movie contract, Parker approved it. Every concert booking, Parker arranged it. Every sponsorship, every merchandise deal, every television appearance. Parker handled it. Parker decided. Parker took his half first. Elvis never saw a contract before he signed it. Not once. By the early 1960s, Elvis Presley was the most famous person on earth. The Beatles had just exploded onto the scene. They were asked in an interview who their biggest influence was. Every single one of them said the same name, Elvis. And Elvis, at the peak of his powers, at the height of his talent, was making movies. Not the movies he wanted to make. The movies Tom Parker wanted him to make. Between 1960 and 1969, Elvis made 31 films. 31. Almost all of them were formulaic, low-effort productions that critics destroyed and audiences barely tolerated. Elvis hated them. He begged Parker to let him take serious acting roles. He wanted to work with real directors, real scripts, real stories. Barbra Streisand personally offered Elvis the lead role in A Star is Born. Parker turned it down. Why? Because Parker's movie deals came with a condition. Parker received a producer's fee on top of his management cut. The worse the movie, the easier it was to produce. The easier it was to produce, the more movies they could make. The more movies they made, the more money Parker collected. Elvis's artistic soul was being systematically destroyed, and Parker was getting rich doing it. And then came Las Vegas. In 1969, Parker signed Elvis to a residency at the International Hotel in Las Vegas. Elvis would perform there for weeks at a time, multiple shows per night for the next 7 years. The world called it a comeback. It was actually a trap. Here is what nobody told you about those Las Vegas years. Tom Parker had a gambling problem. Not a small one, a catastrophic one. According to multiple sources who worked at the International Hotel, Parker gambled away hundreds of thousands of dollars in that casino, sometimes in a single night. And the hotel, which had an arrangement with Parker, quietly forgave those debts in exchange for keeping Elvis on that stage. Think about what that means. Elvis Presley, the biggest star in the world, was performing night after night, exhausted and medicated, not because it was good for his career, but because his manager needed to pay off his gambling debts. Elvis found out about the gambling. According to people close to him, he confronted Parker more than once, and Parker always had the same answer. You leave me, and I'll tell the world the truth about you. What truth? Nobody knows for certain, but Elvis never left. By the mid-1970s, Elvis Presley was a shadow of the man he had been. He was bloated, exhausted, and dependent on a cocktail of prescription drugs that his personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis, known as Dr. Nick, was prescribing at levels that should have alarmed anyone paying attention. In the last 20 months of Elvis's life, Dr. Nick prescribed Elvis over 10,000 doses of sedatives, amphetamines, and painkillers. 10,000 doses in 20 months. Dr. Nick was later charged with over 100 counts of over-prescribing drugs to Elvis and other patients. He was acquitted. Where was Tom Parker during all of this? Right there. Booking the shows, signing the contracts, collecting the money. A man in that condition could not negotiate his own contracts. A man in that condition could not challenge his manager. A man in that condition could not fight back. Some people who were close to Elvis during those final years have said something that is deeply disturbing. They believe Parker knew exactly how dependent Elvis had become, and they believe Parker preferred it that way. August 16, 1977. Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Presley was scheduled to begin a new tour in 2 days. He had spent the night awake, as he often did, reading in his bedroom while the rest of the house slept. His girlfriend, Ginger Alden, was asleep in his bed. At some point in the early afternoon, Ginger woke up and noticed Elvis wasn't beside her. She found him on the bathroom floor. He was 42 years old. The official cause of death was cardiac arrhythmia. But the toxicology report, which was initially suppressed, showed 14 different drugs in Elvis's system at the time of his death. 14. The medical examiner who conducted the autopsy later said publicly that he believed the drugs, not heart failure, killed Elvis Presley. That medical examiner was quietly removed from his position shortly after making that statement. Tom Parker's response to Elvis's death was immediate. Within hours, while Elvis's body was still at Graceland, Parker had already contacted RCA Records and merchandise companies to discuss how to maximize revenue from Elvis's death. He reportedly told one executive, "Nothing has changed. This won't change anything." And he was right. Parker continued to manage Elvis's estate. He continued to collect his 50% from a dead man. It wasn't until 1983, 6 years after Elvis died, that the Presley estate finally went to court to remove Tom Parker. A judge reviewed the management contract and called it fraudulent and beyond all reasonable bounds of industry standards. 50%. For over 20 years. Fraudulent. The judge's words, not ours. Tom Parker died in 1997. He was 87 years old. He never returned to the Netherlands. He never applied for a passport. He never publicly acknowledged being Andreas van Kuijk. The murder of Anna van den Enden in Breda in 1929 was never officially solved. The full financial records of Parker's management of Elvis have never been made public. And the 14 drugs in Elvis's system on the day he died, and who was responsible for putting them there, was never the subject of a criminal investigation. Elvis Presley deserved better. He deserved a manager who worked for him, a doctor who protected him, a system that didn't chew him up and spit him out while the people around him got rich. Instead, he got Tom Parker, a man with no name, no country, no conscience, and 50% of everything. What do you think? Was Tom Parker the greatest villain in music history? Or was there something even darker going on behind the scenes? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, the men behind the curtain, the contracts nobody was supposed to see, the secrets that were buried with the people who knew them, subscribe to Behind Closed Doors. Because we are just getting started.